With this many rackets to choose from, how on earth are you going to figure out what's best for you? Well, watch this video and I'll help you out. Hi, Ben from PH Tennis here, and today I'm going to help you choose your next racket. It's a bit of a minefield, the world of tennis rackets, frames as they're referred to in the biz, and essentially there are hundreds and hundreds to choose from. So how are you going to narrow it down from 100 to the right racket for you? That's what we're going to try and do today. This is my Speed MP. I love it, it's great, it provides me with endless joy and lots of victories on the tennis court, and that's a big part of it. So much of the world of tennis is very technical, very nuanced, people really delving into the detail of a tennis frame. But ultimately you should have a good time using it, it should provide you with loads of success and lots of fun. And remember, tennis is fun. I am assuming for the purposes of this video that you've already decided you want a tour level racket, a proper full graphite player's frame. So we're not going to talk about composites or aluminiums or anything like that. So this is my Speed MP, and I'm going to use this as a bit of an example to show you how I came to the conclusion that this was the right racket for me. These things coming up are in no particular order. Some might be more important than others, but it's a very sort of personal process this. So this isn't a ranking, this isn't an order, this isn't one of these videos where wait for number one, you're not going to believe it. Each of these are important, and you could argue equally so. So let's start with the very first thing, and we're going to talk about head size. So the first thing you may well consider is the head size, essentially the size of the tennis racket. 100 square inch is pretty standard these days. Anything bigger than that would be an oversize. Anything smaller than that, you're starting to edge towards slightly more high level frames. The important thing to remember here is though, it is not that massive a difference. It's not hugely important. My Speed MP is 100 square inch. Percept 97, handily named, that's a 97 square inch racket. This head Palm Tree Crew, 98. You can get a Shift 99, you have a few 95s. That is just the size of the head. The theory goes, the smaller the head size on your racket, the harder it is to use. The smaller the sweet spot becomes, the denser the strings get. So ultimately, if you're a very, very good tennis player, you're more likely to use a smaller head size than if you are a beginner. We tend to suggest to our customers, if you're a beginner or just getting into the game, you probably want to go to 100. Any bigger than that starts getting a little bit risky. Some rackets go all the way up to a wild 115. This looks like a snowshoe. There are pros, there are cons, but ultimately you probably don't want to go to the extremes. So I would avoid 115, I would avoid 90s and 93s. The main takeaway here is that 100, 99, 98, 102, there isn't a huge difference between them, so don't worry too much. If in doubt, go with 100. That's head size. So the next thing to consider is the string pattern. String pattern has two numbers. The first number is the mains. These are the strings that run down the racket, the mains, and the other number will be crosses. In almost every case, there are more crosses than mains. The less strings you have, the further apart they are. The further apart, the more they move. The more they move, the more spin, the more power you get, but you lose some control over the impact. The head size has some influence here. Smaller head size is going to bring the strings closer together, why we covered it first, but ultimately if you want lots of power and spin, you want a more open string pattern, 1619, 1618, and if you want a really solid heavy control racket, you're going to go for something with more strings in, like an 1820. Now some rackets come with this option as sort of built into the silo. No, I'm going to say that again. Some frames have this as an option. This Pure Strike here, for example, is the 98 1619. Babolat also sell a Pure Strike 98 1820. So exactly the same racket, one with more strings in, one with less. So in some instances, it really is that direct a choice. On a lot of other frames, will always come with one or the other. My speed MP is a 16-19. I like the movement, I like the power, I like the spin. Easy to use. I'd suggest for most club players, 16-19 in a 100 square inch frame is going to be pretty straightforward and pretty easy to get on with. So that's string pattern for you. Next up, we have the weight of your racket. An important note here, the static weight. How much your racket just weighs as an item. Most frames, the standard range is going to be between 260 grams at the very low end, up to about 340 grams at the heavy end. That doesn't sound like much. There's only 80 grams difference from the heaviest to the lightest, but you'd be amazed at how different a racket can feel. I would say this is maybe the most important thing for new players to get right. If you've been playing for a while, you're already going to have a pretty good sense of this. The key thing to remember is you want to use the heaviest racket possible that you can maneuver comfortably and easily, right? If you feel like you're swinging a racket at the ball and you're just like, I need more, it's just not quite giving me enough, you need a heavier racket. Conversely, if you're like, oh God, I feel like I'm lumbering this heavy, that's certainly too heavy. I hate to generalize, most male players are going to be starting around 300, most female players around 280, but there is obviously a humongous range, and I'm not saying you should exclude yourself from any weight at all. You need to have a racket in your hand, you need to pick it up, and you need to feel what it is like. More weight, a heavier racket is going to absorb more impact from the ball, kind of good for your shoulder, but most importantly, heavier rackets create more power. It really is as simple. The more mass you swing at the ball, the more force you create. So heavier rackets for more power, lighter rackets for more maneuverability, but it has to be within the realms of your control. Okay, you can't step out one way or the other. You want to use the racket that is right for you, and getting the weight bang on is incredibly important. So maybe should have come earlier in the video, but number 3, make sure the weight is right. You found the weight you like, you know how heavy the racket is, you know what you feel comfortable with, but where is that weight put? This is the handle, this is the head. Your balance point on a racket, usually around 315, 310 mil. That's 31 centimeters from the handle. We go up. So the higher the number, the further towards the head we are. 30 rounds are usually around here, and you'll see this sort of test all the time. People do this. Ultimately, it's completely meaningless, but that would be a balanced racket if it stays on your finger like that. A head heavy racket will tip this way, and a handle heavy racket will tip like that. Not very scientific, but it does give you an idea. When the weight is closer to your hand, the weight is in the handle, that means it is a more maneuverable racket. It is easier to throw around. As your hand moves, it sort of pulls the end of the racket quite light and whippy. Good for single-handed backhands, good for very advanced players, and usually found on the more advanced rackets with smaller head sizes. Conversely, lighter rackets with bigger head sizes that often need a bit of extra power, you're going to find the weight goes down towards the head, down this end. There's no right or wrong, just like the weight, the string pattern, the head size, all of this stuff, it's just what you prefer. If you want a bit more power, a bit more juice in your game, you're going to go for a balance point towards the head. If you want a bit more control, balance point towards the handle. My head speed here, as I showed you, right in the middle, perfectly balanced. Just personal preference, find out what you like. Some of you might have been having a little look around, trying to do some research and keep bumping up against this thing called swing weight. Now, swing weight is static weight and balance point sort of bundled together and creates a swing weight, i.e. how heavy your racket is when you're actually swinging it around. The idea is that when the weight's in the handle, because it's closer to your hand, almost in your hand, you don't actually feel it when you move it. So rackets that have more weight down towards the head feel heavier when you play with them, as in the swing weight will be higher. A lot of rackets do not advertise this number. It is very dependent on the exact frame in your hand, the one you're actually holding. The consideration here is only really for very, very high level players who really want to get into the nitty gritty and the detail of their racket. If you are looking for your first racket, you're a beginner, intermediate, maybe just even a club player, I wouldn't worry too much about swing weight, because it is just a combination of balance and static weight. The other thing we found is a lot of frames, and I'm sure you'll correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but a lot of manufacturers, as they make a lighter racket, shift the balance so the swing weight actually remains fairly similar. Next up, we have stiffness. Now, it's a bit ambiguous, stiffness. It's a bit nebulous. Nobody really knows. There's an RA rating, which is Babolat's thing. We also have the SI 3D, and this is kind of the point. Everyone's a little bit different. The margins are very, very small. I wouldn't use this as a key decision maker when purchasing a racket. Usually though, thicker beamed rackets are stiffer. Stiffer rackets are a little bit less comfortable. Stiffer rackets tend to be slightly more powerful. My speed here, as you can see, it's got quite a thin beam. This Wilson Ultra has a slightly thicker one. This Wilson Ultra will be stiffer than this speed. It really doesn't matter what the number is, it matters how it feels to you. If you have got the opportunity to put a racket in your hand and it feels, oh, this feels stiff and quite harsh, that's a stiff racket. It's like, oh, this feels quite sort of floppy and comfy, that would be a soft frame. So it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but it is worth knowing. So now you know. Another huge and very important thing to consider is the grip size of your racket. There's two scales. We've got one that goes up in 4 3/8, 4 1/4, 4 5/8, 4 1/2. I think my maths is right. And there's a simpler system, which is grip 1, grip 2, grip 3, grip 4. The smaller the number, the smaller the handle, and essentially just the width around the circumference, I should say, of the handle. Bigger grips are harder to hold, so you have your hand in a more open position. If you have long fingers, big hands, you're going to want a bigger grip. Smaller fingers, small hands, you want a smaller grip. Smaller grips tend to be held tighter. That can often lead to tennis elbow and problems like that. But again, this is absolutely critical that you find the one that's right for you. I use a grip 3, Joe uses a grip 2, Josh is a grip 4, I think. It really is personal preference. If you're not sure, go one smaller than you think. You can always make them bigger, but you cannot make them smaller. So always on the side of caution and go for a smaller one. You can get special heat shrink wraps to up the size of the grip, and you can sort of play around with it using overgrips and replacement grips as well. It is very important, but it is changeable if you go smaller than you end up needing. So grip size, smaller, but make sure it is comfy. And lastly, thing to consider is the strings in the racket. Now, we haven't got time in this video to go through all that. We have other videos. In fact, we have loads of videos about all the rackets we've ever tested, so you can check all them out. But your decision when it comes to stringing the racket is this. Find a racket that you like how it feels. Then use the strings to edit any performance issues. So if you want a bit more power, a bit less spin, maybe a bit more comfort, you can edit the strings, you can change the strings, the tension, the material, all that kind of stuff is sort of like the adjustments you can make later down the line. When choosing a racket, try and avoid thinking about the strings too much. It will make it way too complicated. There are an infinite number of options when you start combining tensions and gauges and all this sort of stuff. So for the purposes of this video, forget about the strings, just find the racket you like, and then you can make any tweaks you need later. If you are fascinated by strings, and I know a lot of you out there will be, guess what? We have a video for you, so check that out. So there you have it. Everything, I think, you need to consider before buying a racket. We've got grip size, we've got weight, we've got head size, string pattern, balance point, stiffness, and the strings you put in it. Excuse me, everyone, is that everything? Yeah, that's everything. The most important thing is just to make sure that you enjoy the racket, that it feels nice in your hand and you have fun playing with it. Try and avoid getting bogged down in all the details and worrying about this 5 grams here and an extra string there and a balance point. It really doesn't matter. If you like the racket, that's all that matters. So, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check out all our other advice on this channel and on our coaching channel. The links and stuff are below. And as usual, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you never miss a thing from PH Tennis.
Did you say swing weight?
And swing weight. Now I've said it.